And I apologize that apparently my webcam has decided that now is the day that it is giving up the ghost.
Blame it on Bill Gates.
Oh, okay, Brian, this is Roy Rezak from Lancaster. Would now be a good time then to call the Lancaster Finance Committee to order?
By all means, good sir.
All right. So checking for a quorum here by roll call. Emily Kerrigan.
Here.
Okay, Mike Plutoric.
Here.
Okay, and Roy Rezak. We have three. We have a quorum. So our meeting is called to order. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank, first of all, Mr. Downing,
Recording in progress.
Mr. Downing and Mr. Perry for being here tonight. Sorry, to walk us, not Mr. Perry. I apologize. Um, to be here with us tonight to walk us through this. I'm very excited to see this. And my only request is that as we move through tonight, if you have questions, please don't be afraid to sort of speak up and ask them immediately. And we will go about this as smoothly as we can. With that, Mr. Downing, I yield the floor to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Patudo. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Want to welcome everyone from the Finance Committee of our host town this year, Stowe. Also our members from the town of Lancaster and the advisory members from the town of Bolton. I want to also introduce to everyone who I know you all are familiar with him, but the community may not be if they're watching. This is Ross Mulcairn. He is our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Operations, and Safety for the Neshoba Regional School District. As this is a finance meeting, you're going to hear a lot from Mr. Mulcairn tonight, and certainly I'll have some opportunities to speak as well. So we look forward to going through the presentation with you tonight, and then we'll take an opportunity to solicit some questions at the end, and so that everyone has clarity on the construction of the school budget for this year. So, Mr. Mulcairn, if you wouldn't mind calling up the presentation.
Superintendent Downing, just one second.
Sorry to interrupt, Ross. Kirk, did you want to say a few words about Dick? Yeah, I'm doing that on this slide right here, Don. Thank you for that. No. To begin tonight's presentation, as our friend Don Cole acknowledged, we want to take a moment to recognize Dick Trussell, a longtime Lancaster resident, and certainly was dedicated to the town through his volunteer work, through his work on the finance committee here in town. I interacted with Dick quite a bit over the 4.5 years that I knew him when I became superintendent here in Neshoba. Certainly he will be missed, and we were thinking about him this season. Ross and I were reminiscing today about Dick, that this is going to be our first public presentation on the budget to our towns without him. So just a shout out to Dick's entire family, and know that we miss him, and we support you as well. So thank you for that moment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Mulcairn to go give us an overview of the presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. For those of you who have been following our school committee meetings or have been through this process in the past, we're going to follow a similar and predictable format, so that this should not be too much of a curveball in terms of the presentation, but obviously the information is up to date. Superintendent Downing will go through our sort of big pictures of why we do the work, how we do the work, and our sort of mission and vision as a school district. We will talk about equity and equality in budgeting. I will do the bulk of the FY27 budget. We'll talk about where we are with our timeline, how the progression has gone. I'll walk you through each meeting and the sort of essential pieces from that, and then result in where the town assessment's at as of this evening. And then we'll sort of summarize and talk about the next steps that we have as a school district relative to the budget work ahead. Superintendent Downing.
Thank you. So we want to go over a little bit, essentially, what does a school budget buy? So we have to come back to what are our core values, our vision, and our mission. So as we inspire and challenge all learners to realize their unique potential and become active contributors to their community, we construct the budget in a way to ensure that we're meeting that standard. Our vision in Neshoba is for everyone in our care to be their best selves, pave their path, and impact the world. Now, based on our core values of academic achievement, personal growth, voice, choice, and agency, lifelong learning, a safe, caring, and inclusive community, collaborative partnerships, innovation, and a sense of belonging for all, we look to lift, through our theory of action, the mission of our system. Next slide, Mr. Mulcairn. And if we are able, through good communication systems and protocols, clearly aligned and articulated curriculum, innovative practices, shared leadership, and equitable opportunities, we are going to be able to realize that mission of inspiring and challenging all learners to realize their unique potential and becoming active members, contributors to their communities. So that is the essence of what we look at when we are building a budget. And so next, when we look at that, the budget is constructed when we talk particularly about how we staff our schools with the idea of equality in mind and equity in mind. Equality is based on ratios, and that's where we have our administrative ratios, the guidance counselor ratios, our deans, our classrooms. We've gone over this before in this meeting before, but I remind that if that is how we look at balancing equality across our towns and staffing our schools. Where we look at equity, we define that as each and every student getting what they need each and every day. And so there's some specialized instruction that happens for students that can vary from town to town based upon the needs of those students as they're defined in their IEPs, their 504s, their English learner plans, or through our Title I program. So it's those multi-systems of support where we are distributing our employees in an equity model to ensure that we're getting to each and every student. Mr. Mulcairn.
On the screen before you see our budget timeline. We update this at each and every meeting with the school committee during our budget season. The budget sort of planning begins well before October. However, that's when we notify the school committee of the timeline. Much of the work between October and January is internal. That's when we're working to establish our targets, work with our schools and departments, lay out what our personnel needs may be, lay out those needs that may be tied to student need, and get those things all secured and put forward from the schools and the departments in order to put them all together for that budget workshop in January. Since that time, we've updated the school committee twice and the public on the FY27 budget, which brings us to this evening. We have received our governor's budget numbers, our state aid numbers, and we are moving forward with those in the budget that you'll see this evening. Our major budget drivers this year are different than last year. We certainly have some benefit increases and we have some contract obligations. But you'll see in our presentation how we've mitigated some of the things that impacted us last year in planning for FY27. So here's sort of a summary of where things were from the workshop to this evening. You can certainly see our outset number that came in just under 7%. Since that time, we've gotten the governor's budget and state aid. We made some salary adjustments. We adjusted our insurance with the range number that Maya gave us. We'll talk about that a little bit. We applied some special education adjustments that helped bring down the budget number. And then in last evening's presentation, we applied the verbal rate that we got from Maya on our insurance rate specific to us. We did some reductions of kindergarten sections due to enrollment, specifically tied back to what Superintendent Downing said relative to our equity across the district to keep things, keep things moving, and then certainly updated some reductions and offsets increased to bring down the budget further. So the key information that we want to share that's relative to this group and those of you who watch our financial targets is we're going to start with just talking about health insurance. So just from a big picture, our enrollment counts in our active plans are down. We did have some staff members take advantage of our opt-out program, which incentivizes people to leave our insurance program if they've been in for a certain number of years. That obviously helps keep costs down on our side. So we have looked at solutions. We did get the Maya range, and we updated that information. But to set our insurance numbers at the outset, Maya presented a range after this meeting, but at the beginning of the budget, we did set our insurance rate at 20% because that was the high end of the range that we got last year. So we replicated that, which was the right move. So other couple things that we want to highlight that are part of the budget that I know that this group in particular pays attention to. We're continuing to follow through on the OPEB contribution that OMAC group put together. And I know that Don Cole's here this evening. I don't believe anybody else who's here was on that group. Certainly Dick Trussell was, Stan Wysocki at the time. It was run by Scott Powell from our school committee. So really good group. They met with our actuaries who put together our OPEB evaluation, and we're continuing to move forward with their recommendation, which puts the OMAC trust contribution at $125,000 for FY27. Also, obviously, transportation is a hot button issue. So our big regular yellow school buses are based on our contractual rates. We are currently on year 4 of a 5-year contract. So we're exercising next year will be year 3 of the 3-year options. So we'll be going out to bid again next year. I also want to point out debt service. So I'll talk about that a little bit further. Sorry. Oops, now I'm moving my slides. And that's documented on a further slide. It was the next slide in this presentation to school committee for the workshop. But we presented on debt service in December. I'll get to those numbers later. You will note that there's no planned additional borrowing for the high school project during FY27 that would impact the towns. So expect additional debt for FY28 coming on board. In budgeting the health insurance, just like I said, here are some just quick facts on how our plans work. Here's our employee enrollment. So if you can see, these are active employees, not retirees, but as you can see, they sort of have held level. They came back up in FY25, and therefore we planned off of those numbers for FY26. FY26, they're down, so that's our plan for FY27. We use our January head count in budgeting. We don't pad our insurance counts. We leave them at where they are in January in making those decisions. We always have people come off plans and come on plans as we have natural attrition in the district within that. Just over 2 weeks ago, we did an update to the school committee, and the major pieces on that were the update to the governor's budget and state aid. So in the FY26 budget, you can see those numbers. Those numbers were used in the initial budget presentation to the school committee at the workshop, because that's what we had from last year. So our budget methodology is to not try to guess, but to wait for the state aid and the governor's budget to make those adjustments. And you can see those in the second column where it says FY27 governor's budget. So those worked in our favor in some places and then didn't work in our favor in some other places. But overall, you can see the impact from the governor's budget and the state aid numbers released. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Downing. As you all recall, special education costs were a big part of our increase last year. We are not going to be immune from any of these things, but we do have, we've done a lot of research, and Superintendent Downing is going to talk about that relative to how we can approach this and mitigate our cost increases moving forward. So Superintendent Downing.
Thank you. So I think I'll begin by just stating that we acknowledged last year those increases in special education transportation as well as tuition costs were quite dramatic. And so as we've been studying and working on that issue, I'm going to bring you along on our plan for how we're addressing that this year and for the future. So out of district tuitions are what we're talking about for tuition costs. These are students who attend schools in either other public schools, collaboratives, or private education schools because they have programming that is specifically designed for educational services for which we cannot deliver that education within Neshoba. And so, for instance, an example might be a student that is in a residential setting for their educational needs. And then for special education transportation, there's two buckets for us to think about here. That's our in-district transportation and our out-of-district transportation. Mr. Mulcairn? So, looking at our special education cost escalation, we went back and built this off of FY, going all the way back to FY23. And you can see the dramatic increases that we've increased to roughly around 40% over the last 4 years. I want this group to know this is an issue all across the state of Massachusetts. And we had an opportunity this week in the Worcester County Superintendent's Roundtable to sit with our legislative leaders. Representative Kilcoyne and Senator Kennedy were present at that meeting and recognized the issues that are going on and how the dramatic increase in pricing over recent years has outpaced actual enrollment in out-of-district schools, explaining some of this increase in cost. Next slide. But what you'll also see in Neshoba is going back to FY20, looking at enrollment for our out-of-district placements as well as our in-district enrollment. I'm going to take the bottom line first. That's our in-district enrollment. So you can see it's increased from 477 students to 544 today. And you'll also notice there's a post-COVID increase that has happened there. That certainly we are studying and looking into to find out how to support our students. These are costs in special education that the vast majority are handled in the school buildings with the staff that we have on staff here. Where we'll see some increase is in district transportation costs because some of those students are transported across our towns to the specialized programming that we offer in our schools. And that's a good thing because whenever we can place students in our in-district programming, it keeps our students in their community, and it is a cost-effective model for us to deliver that instruction. For when in the team meeting process, IEP process, the team decides that a student needs to have their needs met outside of the district, that is our out-of-district placements. And you can see the enrollment in FY20 and FY25 was at 35 and 37, and last year it was at 42 and we're at 44, and this year we're anticipating next year we're anticipating 42 students that we're aware of to date. But what I would point to is look at the years from FY22 and then ultimately FY24. Those are the post-COVID years. And so many families elected not to send their students to those out-of-district placements and look for alternative ways to do that. You can see we have sort of rebounded and recoiled from that time, explaining why there's been such a dramatic increase over the past couple of years as folks return to those out-of-district placements. But you'll also know in FY26, a jump from 28 to 44, that includes new move-ins to our district, as well as families that live within our district, but need those out-of-district services that are coming into the school system in kindergarten and first grade as well. And so these are students that have the highest needs. And some come with full-time nursing needs as well. And so their transportation takes them to locations all over the Commonwealth, into New Hampshire, and we have a student that's actually in Providence, Rhode Island as well. So they vary across the region, and that comes with a cost. You'll see in the box here the note of tuitions. Some of the tuitions range as little as 62,000 years, our minimum tuition that we pay, and our maximum tuition is $338,000 for the year. So you can see that is a very intensive placement for someone that has needs that require that. Next slide.
Kirk, before you move on, please, a
Yes.
question.
Sure, Roy.
Okay. The 544 in-district enrollment.
Yeah.
We have about 3,000 in the Neshoba High School, correct? Is this
Well,
five
in the Neshoba school system,
in the Neshoba school system?
Yes.
Thank you. Right, 1,000 in the high school or so, roughly,
about
correct?
800.
Okay, all right. Am I to interpret this 544 that of the 3,000 we have in the district, is that 18% of the district, or is that an initial 18% of the district that needs special education?
Thank you. It's a great question. When we look at our data, in Roy, I don't have the data in front of me now. Over that course of time, post-COVID, our special education eligibility has increased from 17% to now it is roughly just a tick over 21%, if I remember from the last October 1 reporting. So yes, we have seen that increase.
Thank you.
And
Super.
one of the things that our Director of Student Services has indicated is we've seen a significant increase in preschool services for special education. So that in-district enrollment does include the pre-K. So let's not forget that as well, Roy.
All right, thank you.
Superintendent Downing, if I could just add in, because a similar question came up during the school committee meeting. Our rates of identification of students with disabilities track just under the state average, but they track the same way from pre-pandemic through today, just to give you a sense of context.
Thank you
And
for that reminder.
and one last question, Kirk.
Yeah.
My understanding is that these cost determinations are determined by the state and they provide the number to you folks, and the district has to find a way to pay it. Is that a correct understanding of the process?
I might call Mr. Mulcairn in here for a minute, but I'm going to answer it this way. The state sets the rates for our public schools where students are eligible for public school placements, in the private schools for which students are eligible for public school placements, because those private schools have to meet department standards and regulations in order to make placements at those schools. And the operational services divisions are the ones who present those rates. You may remember, Roy, over the past 3 years, we presented on how those rates post-COVID were 6%, 14%, 7%. This year, the OSD rate was increased at 3.6%. That is not keeping up with the funding that we receive through state aid to support that. And this is the major issue that we've been talking to our legislators about, and why we're advocating for. I don't have the House bill number in front of me, but we are advocating for the passing of both the reexamination of the circuit breaker formula as well as the Chapter 70 formula, because we feel that those processes are not keeping up with the needs of the time. And what ends up happening is it ends up putting the burden on local towns to make up the difference.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I
And
would only.
those are mandated costs. We do not have an option on those.
Right.
Yeah,
That's-
the only thing I would add in on that, which I think is relevant because of the percentage that's set by the OSD, that's the sort of floor. A out of district placement, one of these private placements can seek what's called a reconstruction of their rate from the OSD individually. That's not necessarily done out in the open. We only find out about the rate increase on the back end when we sort of get the notice from the school that their tuition rate is going up, or their per hour charge for occupational therapy or for one-to-one nursing and wherever it may be is going up. So that there's additional cost there, and the Superintendent's Association for Massachusetts is actually working with the OSD to ask for more clarity around that process and how that not only happens and how it's approved, but what have been the increases, what's been approved, so that we can really see and have transparency around those increases. And again, that's not within the control. I think, Roy, what you were saying is, we don't find out about that. We don't have we don't have an ability to negotiate a student's tuition.
Oh, I want to just add another point to this since we're have moved into a sort of a conversational point of this. And that is, I know Ms. DeManch, our student services director, is looking at all of the needs of the students in our added district placements. And we're examining the potential of building in-district programs. We have to have enough students with the needs to justify building that in district. So we're working on that to help mitigate those costs for the future as well, because it's our hope and our goal to keep as many students as possible in district because we think it's good for the student, good for the families, and certainly good for our residents in terms of cost efficiencies. We simply know that for some students, their needs cannot be met in our local schools because they have extreme needs. And that's where you see those high cost tuitions like the $338,000 annual tuition.
Okay, just one last question. When you get farther on and you're looking at roll-up costs, would you highlight the total costs for the special education programs and that as a percentage of all of our educational costs? When you get to that, a related slide to that.
Okay. We'll do our best there, Roy.
Okay.
If I may interject really quickly as well, gentlemen. You highlighted this, and I think you said it, but I want to be very clear on this. The increase that we're seeing post-COVID is statistically significantly different than the rate of increase that we were seeing pre-COVID.
So what we see, I think that's Brian, only because I can only have 4 cells on my screen right now.
Yes, that is Brian. I apologize.
So Brian, what this illustrates here, and I would look particularly at the added district enrollment, is our approximation is not very far off on added district compared to pre-COVID. During COVID, there was a decrease in the students accessing out of district programs. Some of that was self-selection. Remember, when we're talking about special education services for out of district, we're talking about ages 3 to 22. So that does include some students that are in transition programs post high school. So there's some complexity to that number. I think where we see ourselves anticipating at 42 students in added district enrollment, I think we have stabilized from that post-COVID time to approximating what pre-COVID time looked like. Now, for our in-district enrollment, that has gone up, and that's reflected across the state as well. We're able to absorb those costs better because we have staffing in place within our districts. And so we can do groupings, and we have a co-teaching model in our middle schools, for instance. We have some specialized programming within districts at each of our elementaries, middle schools, and our high school to meet those needs. So it doesn't have, the in-district enrollment does not have as significant budgetary impact as the out-of-district enrollment does, particularly since that out-of-district enrollment involves tuitions and transportation.
No, I understood that. I suppose I could ask my question better that if you're looking at 20 and 21 versus 26 and 27,
Yeah.
the numbers aren't, that's a what 8% shift across 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's a similar value between 20 and 27 for the in-district enrollment. Are we looking at a general trend of an increase in the necessity of special ed support and therefore the cost over time, or is this a local inflection where we're seeing things where, as a result of, for example, the challenges that we all experienced throughout COVID, we're seeing a short-term increase, or is this a greater indicator of a long-term trend and a subsequent a increase in costs that we should be projecting forward into the future?
That's a great question, Brian. I think it's a very complex question, so I'm going to try to distill it into, I think, the clearest terms I can. I wish I had Ms. DeManch with me. One of the impacts that we have seen post-COVID to pre-COVID is the number of students found eligible from age 3 up through the early grades, kindergarten and first grade. And so we can extrapolate and maybe project the reason behind that and what social interaction looked like and social development and academic development in those very formative years of time. So to say that that's the pattern moving forward, I don't know if I can read that much into the crystal ball, but what it does suggest to us is that we have students now that are going to be moving up through the system, which is why we've invested in our multi-tiered systems of support within the operational budget to try to deliver high quality tier 1 instruction so that those special education numbers don't actualize in the way that we would see that trend increase in the future.
Thank you very much.
Happy to follow up on that question as well, Brian, and Ross and I will bring that to Ms. DeManch at our cabinet meeting next week.
Yeah, Superintendent Down, the only thing I would add is sort of my former principal hat to Brian's question was that a lot of families may have foregone early intervention and even preschool services during the pandemic because of the nature of restrictions and everything else. One thing that we've done within the district is we've actually restructured our preschool programs, but we've also have a dedicated special education administrator for preschool and early childhood now, where we didn't before. So we're trying to match the need at that level with dedicated leadership and support.
And I'll give you 2 specific examples. We were able to bring more 5-day full day seats into our program. Ross, we did that 2 years ago, I believe. And then we also were able to increase our part-time from a 3-day model to a 5-day model. So that's our effort and we were able to do that in a budget neutral way, in an effort to get to students as quickly as possible as they're entering into school. So time will tell on your question, Brian, in the next couple of years as we get some of that early learning data in those formative years. Okay.
Very much.
Let's move to the next slide. So let's talk about transportation for a moment. When we talk about transportation, 2 factors there that have impacted that dramatic increase that we saw last year. One was the enrollment discussion that we had, but the other was in terms of dramatic costs. 2 years ago, and I'll repeat myself just to refresh our memories from last year. 2 years ago, we had a contract and that service provider was not able to perform. It went through the procurement process through our collaborative, Assabet Valley Collaborative, and we separated from that vendor because they couldn't deliver. That budget was built upon a $270 daily van rate, and so we had to go to the next vendor, and that vendor was more expensive. And so that coupled with the enrollment, so the need for more routes, you can see that at a district. We went from utilizing 14 vans in 24 to 20 vans in 25 to 23 vans in 26. What we've discovered in our study and working with our collaborative, speaking specifically to the added district cost, because that's the one that's the most dramatic, is that our students in the programs of those 44 students that are going to other places are going to locations that other members of our collaborative through their independent IEP processes that they have with their families aren't sending students to the same schools. So as a result, we are not able to ride share with them. So we're taking on the entire cost of a van for an individual student to get to the location for school. We've been working with council this year. Ross, if we can, thank you. Thank you. This is the slide. We've been working with council this year to say what is our obligation to the Assabet Valley Collaborative in terms of them being our, if you will, transportation agent to work on transporting our students to these placements. And just like services, we have the terms of agreement, but we're not bound to that. So under the attorney's advice, this year we've began studying that when we have an opportunity for a student to take a van with a vendor other than the agreed upon vendors with the ABC organization, who are collaborative, does a great job and is very important to our system. We have some students that attend the collaborative. We believe we can build a far more efficient, cost-efficient model for special education transportation by bringing a position in-house. And last night, our school committee approved the job description for us to begin doing that. And so what we believe we're going to be able to do if we were to utilize ABC for 100% of our special education transportation needs, you could see the estimated cost would come at 3.36 million. 177,000 of that is the fee, the 8% fee for van that would go to ABC. By bringing a position in house, and that position is estimated around $80,000. I think we capped in the job description that would go to approximately $78,000. We're able to save $100,000 right there by housing our own transportation coordinator. And we believe that we can, in talking to the vendors that we have engaged with along the way this year, get better price, equal or better pricing than we're getting through our collaborative agreement. And so in speaking with some of those vendors, we would be able to take advantage of doing some ride share. We have some of our students that go to programs north of us, and we're the most northern towns. We're the most northern towns in our collaborative. So I think as a result, those other towns are not sending them to schools that we're sending our students to. Whereas we pass through towns like Leominster, Ayer, Fitchburg on the way to some of these other placements, and we can potentially collaborate with those towns to do some ride sharing to transport our students. So in doing that, we believe we can bring our out-of-district routes down from 23 to 18, as well as looking some efficiencies on our in-district routes and looking at students who are timing out of our program next year. We can bring that from 18 to 15. So by bringing an in-house model, we believe there's a potential reduction in cost over 100% participation in ABC of, as you can see here, around about $700,000. So this was one of those moments where, as we brought this case to our school committee, they approved the job description so we can begin this work in earnest. And what I'll share with you all that I shared with our committee is that we have some early discoveries that we're making in this. We've already been able to move over 8 students into this model. We need the personnel to do it because our team is a small team. So we need a dedicated position to handle this. But even for those 8 students that we've been able to move over, we've had some cost savings there because we've been able to take advantage of smaller fleets that have different pricing structures that are more cost effective for us. So when we live in the collaborative, the large fleets bid the collaborative bids because they have the large fleet of vans that can handle the volume that the collaborative brings. Thus, essentially sectioning out some of those smaller vendors that want to get in with more competitive rates. So we are going to take an approach of, and we're allowed to do this through a 30B exception of, we don't have to go out to bid for procurement of our transportation processes and special education services. We can actually do that van by van, company by company. And so that is a strategy that we're employing now, so that we can get the best pricing based upon where van companies are taking students. So I think this is a creative approach that our team has come up with, and I'm going to pause there to see if any members have some questions about that strategy.
Yes. Hi guys. I've got a question.
Yep.
So, first, I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this, looking for some creative solutions to try to get these transportation costs under control.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have been putting a lot of work into this. But I just want to highlight how incredible some of these numbers are. Over the last 5 years, the number of students utilizing special education transportation has increased something like 25%, a fairly modest increase. But the costs have, under the collaboratives contracts, have gone up like over 300%. And even under this the new approach that you're proposing, the costs are like 225%. It's just mind-boggling how much these costs have increased over just the last 5 years. So I actually do have a question, though.
Bob,
yeah, go ahead.
To set up your question, I'd like Mr. Mulcairn to just
Yeah.
speak to that, because you get to see those costs in terms of how they're reflected specifically in the Neshoba budget.
Yeah.
And there's some other elements to that that are important. So, Mr. Mulcairn.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to your concern, Bob, we share the same. And so there's been previous studies done on this. 2 days ago, the Office of the Inspector General released a report with recommendations not only for school districts, but for the legislative body on how to address this. And a lot of them come into procurement control,
Yeah.
right? Where not only do districts, the state DESE, and the legislative branch of our state government all need to work together, but they all have a role in this. And I think we're doing our role by controlling what we can control. I think there's some positive momentum moving forward where the state can put some caps on increases. The state can come in and do a little bit more like it would with an HVAC vendor to say you have to be responsible and reliable and you have to hit your marks and you can't be in breach of contract all the time and all those things that are probably in your thought process, because I know you're astute on this, but just want to bring some sort of bigger picture clarity to the problem, because it's not a Neshoba problem, it's a state problem.
Yeah. Good.
I think and as you shared before, Ross, we've had grant funding to offset some of these costs.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that grant funding has remained stable, level, and the costs have gone up. And so while what we're showing you are the actual costs, not the costs with offsets, so that you can get a sense of the total line. I will share with the group that what Ross is talking about is titled the Special Education Transportation Study Strategies to Mitigate Rising Costs. This came out of the ACTS of 2025 last summer. I think the good news to say on this is that we did get our legislators' attention on the issue, because and that was done through a lot of advocacy and a lot of work to bring to that step. But attention doesn't solve budget issues. We got to continue to keep that advocacy and the voice rolling to say we need some regulation in this industry to help our towns manage these costs as well. So that was a lot set up, Bob, for your question. I apologize for the interruption.
No problem. Thanks, and thanks for the perspective, and that's all great to hear. My question is pretty simple. When you show us your assessment later toward the end of the brief, does it assume the collaborative negotiated rates or your new approaches rates, and how confident are you that you can get to those numbers?
So we have the new approach built in, and the reason for that is we do feel confident, and our confidence has been increased by the fact that, and we're sort of pushing our current staffing to its limits because they already have daytime jobs with us, and we're asking them to, really push these transportation pieces. We've already seen some positive momentum now that we have the sort of the legal clearance to operate outside of that AVC contract that we are. Well, it's not our contract with the van companies. We're part of the contract through AVC's contract. We're able to operate outside of that, and we're already seeing some positive sort of movement in the sense of getting kids on different rides or sharing rides or whatever it may be.
Bob, what I'll add to that is, and I'm not trying to be coy, in my response to your question, it's that we are working with our vendors and with our collaborative on our future solutions. And so I want to make sure that those talks continue to be
Mhm.
productive. But we have strong confidence that we're going to be able to hit those numbers. Now, Bob, I will say that with this caveat. We feel strong about that based upon the enrollment of the 42 students that we have today. We may have a family move in tomorrow. And an important point to make about that is that if we have a family that moves in after April 1st, the town that that family is coming from is responsible for the cost of that student's tuition and transportation the next school year. We would be picking it up the year after that. It is different when a student is placed in a collaborative. If a family moves in and that student placement is in a collaborative, we assume that cost immediately.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There are variables that can change, what I'm saying to you right now. So
Of course.
I just want to reiterate the position based on a fixed assumption of which students are going out today. Yes, we're confident we can hit that number.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you.
If I may ask one question as a follow-up, you had previously contracted with a company and they were failed to perform mid-semester, and so you replaced them. What was the delta in cost on that? And do you have a delta in cost on should this rideshare program fail to be sufficient? What is the reciprocal delta projections for that?
So on the first one, Ross, do you remember and so Mr. Patuto, we were able to determine performance over the summer session. So we started that year with Cab for Kids because the other vendor, we determined over the summer session, they couldn't handle our demand. And so we went from 270. Ross, do you remember the increased rate at that time?
It was over 300. I'd have to look it back up. I mean, it was 2 years ago. I'd have to check.
Certainly. And so then also with our contracts that we have now, part of the assumptions that we have built into that differential, Brian, is that we have at a minimum the 8 students that we've been able to shift over. And we are currently working on potentially some ride sharing for some of those other students right now. So I'm very confident we're going to hit that number. What that differential is hard for me to predict because some may come in and some won't. We will not be anywhere near that $3.3 million number because we already have those commitments for next year's for at least 8 of the students that are riding. So it's hard for me to nail that down. Certainly Ross and I can go back and study that. Just wouldn't be able to answer that question tonight.
Yeah, I'm
So-
feverishly trying to look at it on my docs on my work phone here, Brian. I'll do my best to take a look.
I totally understand. Like, no, you guys kind of got stuck with, I'm a scientist, so I ask really hard analytical questions.
They're good questions.
Um, Purely logistical question. With these ride sharing programs, is there a situation where these children are in any ever exposed to like the need for a transfer, like from one carrier to another, or from one van run for another?
No.
I didn't think so, but I wanted to make sure on that.
No. And just know also that in doing any ride share, the care of our Neshoba students comes first. And so school districts, we reach out to each other. Our directors of student services talk to each other. They talk about the profiles of the students so that they can come to an agreement of, will these students have a successful ride to school every day? So there's a lot to go to ensure that it's a smooth ride for our students. It's a good decision for our families and mutually beneficial.
Thank you very much.
Kirk, if I can, before we go any further, I just want to revisit Mr. Rezak's question with regards to the special education out of district budget relative to the entirety of the budget. So
Sure.
as it stands from last evening's iteration of the budget, so The total expected cost for out of district placements for next year is 4.5 million. However, we're offsetting that with the circuit breaker reimbursement that we get from the state. So that will bring it down to 2.5 million. And that represents approximately 3.5% of the entire operating budget that's assessed to the towns.
Thank
And
you.
Ross, I do believe that that bottom line number is lower than last year's tuition number, actually.
That's correct, just because of the student count and the placements that those students are in.
Okay.
Okay, so team, let's move on unless
Yeah.
there's further questions.
I'll try to get a little bit more efficient here because we're still talking about the first update. But we had to make some salary adjustments based on formulas, looking at some actuals in a little bit more depth, and then we applied the governor's budget. And the increase was about 176,000. However, because we received a lower range rate from Maya, because we increased to offset from school choice, that's getting we are, as you know, our school choice numbers are going up, so therefore the revenue coming in is going up. We also did that special education transportation cost adjustment, which the vast majority of this adjustment comes from. So at the end of that night, we had reduced the budget by 1.4 million. Going into the second update, which was just last night, there's the addition of the transportation coordinator. We're going to tweak that for our final budget because the approved job description range was a little less, but and then we had some adjustments on salary. Superintendent Downing, do you want to just sort of repeat what you said last night?
Yeah, one of the things that so we're at that time at the end of February where we're beginning to get a handle on how many sections of kindergarten we need. This is always the trickiest grade to staff. We added a kindergarten teacher to center an MRE at the beginning of the budget process, thinking it's possible we may need 4 sections. When we look at enrollment at all of our 3 towns this year, I will say we are tracking for 3 sections in all 3 of our towns right now. We're not pulling back 3 sections of kindergarten, but we are going to pull back 2 sections, leaving that last section in reserve to place at the school that will need that section if they were to cross the threshold. So to give you a sense of up to 66 students, we would have 3 sections of kindergarten. Once we cross that threshold is when we would enact the 4th section. Our current kindergarten roundup have us at approximately 56 students for MRE, 56 students for Florence Sawyer, and believe it or not, 43 students for the town of Stowe to date. These are numbers that are historically low. It matches the trend across Massachusetts. Just this year, we got from the state of Massachusetts a notice that overall state enrollment is down 15,000 students across the state. When I dug into those numbers a little bit, 11,000 of that reduction can be accounted for graduating seniors and against incoming kindergartners. So this is a phenomenon we're seeing all across the street, Commonwealth, is that kindergarten enrollment is down. We feel confident that we can remove 2 of the 3 kindergarten positions. I want to reiterate that the 2 positions we have here are to be determined positions. They are not current staff members. They were placeholders in the event that we needed them. We can now remove those placeholders. We also examined and did some salary adjustments since the last presentation of the budget, and that was a reduction of $188,000. I shared with the school committee last night that we are currently in negotiations with both Unit A and Unit C. And so that number could be subject to change upon conclusion of those negotiations, but that would have to happen post-budget as we are beginning that process with our units right now. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Mulcairn for the remainder.
Yeah, so we also made some adjustments to our computer hardware. Thanks to our state rep, Robin Kennedy, we're able to get an earmark through the state budget this year for our whiteboard projectors. So that will help bring down our hardware for next year as we're able to do those projects this year. Maya, who had that range set with a cap of 14.4, gave us our verbal rate of 11.5, so that brought down the budget even further. Also, in our dental came in under the estimate as well. And then we've increased our offset from circuit breaker. So as you can see with the rising cost, our claims get higher with the circuit breaker program. So we see a little bit more of a return. We'll then apply that to next year's budget. We also increased the athletic user fee offset. So every time an athlete pays their fee, it goes into the athletic revolving, and we use some of that to offset the transportation for athletics, and we increased the offset by 45,000. That offset is now at a total of 105,000. So our increase that we talked about from that position, and then all the reductions that we applied to the budget presented last evening. So we're back down another almost $1 million on the budget. So where we stand as of last night with our operating budget is just over 72.6 million, which has us at a 3.72% increase over last year. As you can see, it's one of the lowest that we've had in a while, thanks to the efforts with the special education work. The impact of our insurance is not as strong, and we're also down on enrollment, which helps obviously on our budget. So what does that mean for the town assessments? This is the world that you all live in your roles on your FinComs and advisories. So I'll just do a quick repeat of some information, but as you know, minimum local contribution and the variable assessment are tied to your operating assessment, and then there's your debt assessment. I'm going to start with the end in mind here on the debt assessment. You can go back to the December 17th school committee meeting, which is linked below, to see the full capital debt presentation. But this is the entirety of our debt laid out for next year. As I said before, there is no anticipated additional new debt for the high school construction. We're going to continue to use our bond money. And then for those of you familiar with the school building process, now that we're fully in construction, we're starting to see those returns on reimbursement from the state through the Massachusetts School Building Authority program. So we'll be able to use that revenue to continue us through until the next borrow, which should not be until FY28 payment expected. So on the assessments, just a link here to the Finance and Operations Center that includes videos on the regional agreement, as well as how we build the budget. These are helpful for anyone in the public. You're happy to review them. I think a lot of you have seen them in the past, but they just sort of break down how everything comes together. So the first piece that we understand comes from DESE, and they publish the minimum local contribution, which many of you know is tied to your equalized valuation, essentially known as the wealth factor. So what that looks like for the three towns over time is sort of this narrowing of the gap from 5 years ago. So as you can see, the minimum local contributions may continue to go up. However, they've been going up at different rates. And sort of the gaps between the towns that existed 5 years ago are now narrowing as those minimum local contributions come sort of closer together in their amounts. Superintendent Downing, anything that you want to add on minimal local contribution before I move forward?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important to understand about minimal local contribution, as Assistant Superintendent Mulcairn mentioned, it's tied to the wealth factor, the equalization values that is done biannually by the state. Both the town of Stowe and Bolton are at the ceiling of 82.5%. So even if the value of their town increases, the calculations for the minimum local contribution don't feel that effect as much because they're at the ceiling. For the town of Lancasters, last I checked, it was I think it was 67% or about that number. So as the value of the town of Lancaster through the equalization value formulas of the state increases, that will increase the minimum local contribution requirement for the town of Lancaster. So that's where it's a little bit different for Lancaster at times than it is for Stowe and Bolton.
So just moving forward to the variable assessment. So we get our Chapter 70 state aid. We get other forms of state aid. We also, use other sources of revenue in our general operating revenue. And then we add on those minimal local contributions, and the remaining balance that is for the budget comes down to the variable assessment. The variable assessment is built on that 5-year rolling average, which is calculated from DESE's foundation enrollment numbers that are provided to us after we submit our enrollment data to them. So you can see circled FY27 is just the raw numbers for the entirety of the district on our foundation enrollment. And then the foundation enrollment percentage is broken down there at the bottom and circled. And you can see the change from 26 to 27 based on those numbers. I think what's more important is to look at it on this slide here. So what you can see as that rolling number changes, how these sort of enrollments have come together over the last 5 years and essentially are pretty tied together as they were very different in the past. Superintendent Downing, anything else on that?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. So when that budget number that's applied for variable assessment is added to your minimal local contributions relative to the current budget, this is how it breaks down for each town. The full budget was posted last night with the school committee materials, the full spreadsheet, which is available as well. And essentially, we have a little bit more work to do before our next update. But we feel like, given where things are at and how we've been able to mitigate cost and what it felt like last year and what factors we were facing last year with reduction of staff, that we're able to provide a continued very strong educational program for each and every student within this budget. So the next steps that we have are obviously the public hearing next week before our third budget update to the school committee. And then the school committee will be doing their vote on FY27 budget the following week. And then we'll be out at your town meetings as the school budget is put forward in front of your towns on your warrant articles. So we'll stop there. Superintendent Downing, assuming we'll open back up again for questions, I'll leave that screen up so I can go back if there's questions about previous slides.
You bet. That'll wrap up our presentation. So Brian, we're ready to take any questions here.
All right, I'm going to dive right in if no one else objects. Oh wait, actually, Don, you have your hand up. Go ahead. You are muted, good sir.
My apologies. I wanted to echo Bob's comments about, I know what a job it is to put together a budget of this magnitude. And obviously you guys know it backwards and forwards. It's great. I did want to provide a little context and a friendly reminder regarding the OMAC recommendations that we had around OPEB. OPEB is a very scary number. Last I looked, we have an unfunded liability of in excess of $50 million. So we've suggested, the OMAC group suggested a few things. And number one was as a base to have to increase the money that we put into the OPEB to increase by 25,000 each year. And that's moving forward nice. But I did want to make a friendly reminder that there were other items that we talked about as are in our recommendations. So for instance, we did discuss about if additional funds come up to use those as much as we practically can. So when we get the extra 225,000 that you got from the state, that we should consider using that or a portion of that to further reduce the OPEB liability. And also the other thing we did mention was using the E&D. So you got a rainy day fund, so to speak, of approximately $2 million. And we thought, certainly a portion of that would be better served in the OPEB and as much as practical and get the earnings that the OPEB is going to get and not to sit and watch the liability increase and kill our health insurance budget, et cetera, that we're paying for currently. That's it for me.
Mr. Cole, is there a question there you'd like to respond to, or were you merely putting that in the record?
Just a comment I wanted to put in the record.
Thank you. Okay.
And for your consideration as we move forward.
Appreciate that. Noted, Mr. Cole.
Thank you.
Ralph, I see your hand. I'm going to jump in real quick and then I will address you, sir. What is our current I'm assuming that the Don was correct in that 50 million, if our 50 million is our current outstanding, what is our current OPEB funding relative as a percentage relative to our total liabilities?
Give me just 1 minute. Brian, I can pull that up and maybe go to another question while I'm doing it. Does that work?
That works for me. Ralph and then Ross.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that you mentioned the governor's numbers for Chapter 70 funding. And of course, the state legislature has to ultimately opine and weigh in. What's the likelihood that the final numbers from the legislature will be identical to or similar to the governor's numbers?
Mr. Gifford, that's a great question. This is a question I asked Senator Kennedy and Rep. Kilcoyne yesterday, as a matter of fact. One of the things that MASS and our lobbying platform, as when Tri-County superintendents meet with our legislators next week, we're going to be lobbying for the same. That last year, the minimum per student increase, excuse me, my throat's a little dry from all the talking.
Understandably.
Yeah. Our minimum per pupil increase last year was raised to 150. And so is our platform that be established as the new standard. And so we're lobbying with our legislators hard. Both Rep. Kilcoyne and Senator Kennedy serve on Ways and Means, and we'll see them in the Joint Ways and Means hearing later this month, later in March, I should say. So I can't say what the probability is, but what I will say is that traditionally in Massachusetts, and it's because there's a supermajority, the State House ultimately has veto power over any line items or changes that the governor wants to make to the budget. So that is the governing body where we need to really work hard to bring that contribution up, and we're working hard to do that.
When do we expect to get the legislative numbers?
The House tends to come out at the end of March. The Senate follows later in April. It goes to conference committee. We don't get the conference committee numbers sometimes until after the school year's closed in June. And then it's ultimately signed into law in July. So that's why our committee had to take the action this past fall to accept the change.
Thank you.
I think the next question goes to my Ross Perry, not Ross McKernan.
Thank you. I appreciate the information and the insight as to what goes into the school budget. Can you tell me what the total assessment will be for Stowe for FY 27, at least so far?
Put that slide back up, Ross, and we'll put that up for everybody to grab their numbers there. Your microphone's off, Ross.
Yeah, no problem. Mr. Perry, you're looking for the total assessment, including the debt assessment?
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So that will be within our full budget document. That's not included on the actual budget presentation because we're just talking about operating. But if you do add in the debt assessment for the town of Stowe, your debt assessment's going down a little bit, but your total assessment, what I'll do is I will give that to you in just a second. Hang on, let me pull that section of the budget up. One moment.
So while Ross is pulling that up, let's take another question for efficiencies, and we'll come right back to you, Mr. Perry.
Bob, I believe you are up next, sir, with Roy on deck.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I just want to reiterate once again, thanks for a great presentation and thanks for all the work you've done to get us to the point where we are now. I know this isn't an easy exercise, but I just want to point out that several months ago, the Bolton Select Board sent the district a letter and said that Bolton can tolerate a 3% operating budget increase for FY27. And beyond that, that is all the funding that is available, and we need to find a way to live within our means. Last year, as you're both well aware, Bolton was forced to approve a Proposition 2.5 budget override. And in the run-up to our town meeting last year and at our town meeting, you discussed with the town this idea of shared sacrifice between the town and the school district, which was very well received. And, part of that, as evidence of that, you mentioned the 4 dean's positions that were being eliminated to get us there. About a week after town meeting, those positions were reinstated. And so the sacrifice never actually happened. So I just wonder, to get us down to the 3% that Bolton is asking for, what else is on the table? Are those positions on the table again, or not necessarily those specific positions, but other positions? How can we get to the point where we're at a sustainable limit of, in Bolton's case, 3% increase?
So at this point, Bob, this is the budget we are bringing forward to our school committee and recommending our school committee for approval. So no, those positions aren't, and those positions were reinstated because we knew at the time we were negotiating the insurance contracts and trying to get that rate knocked down. So the differential of getting the rate knocked down what allowed us to do that. So I'll remind that we still reduced our 16 positions in the district last year to get to those places, and that the school district has reduced by 9% at a time when enrollment went down 3%. That is in terms of headcount in the district. So that's important. So as I think about the town of Bolton, and I know we had some of this discussion at that meeting as well, and the school district's operational budget against the full budget of the town of Bolton, when you take out the debt exclusions, we're able to extrapolate that over the last 3 years, the school district's portion of the operational budget, not including the debt, has actually gone down. It was 65 in FY22, 64.75 the year after that. To last year, it was 62.48. So I think the school district has been demonstrating exactly that feedback that we've been getting to those points, as the school district's budget on the total operational budget of the town has actually gone down 3% over that time.
It is still an enormous part of our budget. It's over 60% of Bolton's operating budget. And what's more concerning to me is that Bolton will generate in revenue this year, in new revenue, which includes the Proposition 2.5 annual increase, plus our new growth, which this year is the highest that we've seen in probably 10 years because we have a new large development that we have built. So, our total growth for FY27 will be around 1.1 million, and the increase in the assessment is 75% of that. It is sucking up almost the entire new growth that we're seeing in Bolton, and that's just not sustainable.
So I hear that, and I know that when we're talking about those numbers, we're talking about 2.5% plus new growth in that equation as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the bottom line for our perspective is we appreciate the efforts to get our increase down to 4.5% or so, but the money is not there to support that. And we've just got to find a way to get it lower than that. And 3% is the number that we feel is sustainable.
So in order to get to that, Bob, then you're talking about changing class sizes. because we've worked on that, and you know that is what we've heard from our communities, and particularly at the time where we're hearing to cut those, I'm hearing from other elements of our community to say we want you to add more positions and reduce the class side caps to 20. In a regional school system, those are sometimes some of the perspectives that come against each other at times from town to town that we have to balance as a school system.
Roy, you are next, sir. Unless, well, I apologize one second. Ross, did you have a chance to get those numbers?
I have them, but let Mr. Rizak speak, and then I can certainly follow up with the and show when the information that has come forward. with the
Okay.
question.
Just to comment and reinforce some comments other people have made in terms of we appreciate the work that you folks have done with the budget and do every year. We appreciate your proactive approach relative to the transportation issue. You didn't just sit back and say, oh, we got a problem we don't know what to do with. You got proactive and you came up with a better approach. We all appreciate that, and I just want to commend you for that. I would comment that one of the things you make comments on as you develop the budget and during the presentation, you will make comments about, oh, in this area, one of the things that's open is, for example, the contracts with the teachers, and I believe the clerk are both contracts with teachers and clerical both still open?
Yes.
I would like to see at the end of almost all of your presentations, you list here are the open issues that we're making our best estimates for, but we don't have complete resolution on. And then here are the issues that we've been able to close. That would help us in towns have a better perspective of the risk factor relative to this. And it would be helpful if you did it for each one of the three estimates you do, kind of thing, kind of a following closing page that says, here's where that stands in terms of we have managed these risks down. These two are still open. We've made estimates for them, but be aware that we don't have that finally done. That would be a big help to us in terms of understanding the risk issues.
Great suggestion. Thank you, Roy.
Ms. Bertudo, is now a good time to jump
Absolutely,
into those?
sir.
Yeah. So let me do the OPEB first. So the OPEB valuation reports for year over year are available on the finance and operations site that we have set up for the district. So there's clarity and transparency around our finances. So the page that you're seeing here, I have to move the windows around a little bit. So the page that you're seeing here on page 15 of the 2025 OPEB liability report, which is as of June 30, 2025, shows here. Get a better color here. It shows our OPEB liability, and then here is our OPEB trust. So that number is approximately
2.18%.
Yeah, yep, that is exactly what I wrote down, Mr. Patudo. So, but you can see sort of from the end of FY24 just over to the end of FY25 how it decreased. It was as low as 48, I think, at the end of FY23. So there's volatility in this because the actuaries who build that liability number use assumptions of all sorts of things about potential costs in the future, mortality rates, retiree rates, all those types of things. So there is a significant amount of variability in that. To the other question from Mr. Perry on page 22 of the 65-page workbook, you can see the total for each of the towns for FY27 as proposed, which includes your operating and your debt structured here. So
If I may, gentlemen, at some point, I would love to see a 5-year average on your OPEB liability compared to our growth of investment. That is a not insignificant amount of money, $50 million. That's roughly two towns worth of our annual contributions. And having that grow, the rate of our liability growth outstrip the rate of our investment growth is a significant threat to the long-term stability of the three-town system. Or at least that's my position on it. I mean, those of us who are both Tom and Ross are very familiar with my love of funding to OPEB at this point. It's one of the first questions I ask our town administrator every year during budget season. I do have one question with regards to
Excuse me, could you put that assessment slide back up again?
I certainly can. All set, Mr. Perry?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
with regards to the minimal assessments, with Bolton Stowe both capped at 85%. Lancaster is at 67%, which means they're 18% from capped as well. With the current growth rate that we're experiencing in terms of expenses, are we 2 years, 3 years from the minimal assessment being a inconsequential number and just more of it progressively being shifted to the variable assessments? And what does that look like in the future for the three town systems as we move beyond that threshold of the three towns minimal assessment is the most we can potentially spend, and the only thing is increasing is the variable assessment?
Brian, that's a tough question for us to answer. It's not because we don't want to answer it. It's because when projecting those assessments, that's based on the state formulas, the equalization values, and the treatment of how that Chapter 70 calculation is done at the state level. That's all based off of inflation factors. And Chapter 70 cannot be increased, or excuse me, I'm saying Chapter 70 when I meant the assessments. So, those are all the formulas that are invested in the town, and that has to do with state level projections to understand that. And we don't have those state level projections. But I think I hear your point that if those minimum local contribution assessments remain flat, then it puts more burden on the variable assessments. And that is a point that I have made to our state legislators as being a concern, which is why we have to get our legislators to pass the Chapter 70 Commission this year. I was at the state hearing last year when the Joint Ways and Means President asked Secretary Tutwiler when the governor's Chapter 70 proposal is going to be sent to the State House. And the reply was the governor is waiting for the House to send it to her office. What they ended up agreeing to is putting potentially this bill together. And that's what's going to be critical to understand that change. I know I went a little farther than your question asked. I'm just trying to illustrate that's a problem. And you brought up the problem, and we're looking for solutions of how to engage with our state leaders to start building a fix to that.
No, I mean, by all means, context is extremely important in times like these. I would ask that you, as sort of organizers of our school district, looked at how many years we have been at cap regarding the various towns, because that will give you an example of how long you have to plan for that. It will also give us context for how long we have to plan for that.
So to your point, for towns that are at the cap, when you do those projections, you can just think in terms of, well, what would in future inflation rates look like in terms of equalization values, because you're not going to have the added factor of increased value being at the ceiling. And for Lancaster, that is more complex because it's forecasting what the value of the town of Lancaster would be over that time.
Thank you. Roy,
Right. As complex as the issues are that we face this year, I think we also need to start doing some work and looking forward to the issues we're going to face next year and in the coming years, particularly as the new developments come online in the various towns. We in Lancaster are looking at a new development here called DCAM, where the state is going to take some unused land and look to turn that into more affordable housing. We also see what you've done in Bolton. Congratulations on getting that done in record time, which I understand was about 5 years or so, but congratulations on that. Okay. Yeah. We smile between friends. I recognize that was a really good schedule on your part. And Stowe has some development going on the golf course. Okay. The issues I think that will affect all of us will be those are new developments that will draw from new, in effect, younger populations that we have than we have now typically in our towns, the percentage of senior citizens versus families, for example. What we need to get is the best data we can on how those new developments are the demographics of those new developments as they come online. The number of children per, two-bedroom, three-bedroom units, apartments, et cetera, that kind of thing. That would be extremely helpful to all of us, not only for the schools in planning just capacity, but also it affects towns and particularly affects Lancaster in terms of ensuring that we don't have a net cost impact to the town of this new subdivision, if you will, that's going to be, possibly brought into town. So I would suggest that all three of us towns look at sharing data and information about the demographics across those new developments, particularly the two new ones that have just come online. That can be very helpful to, if you will, the four partners here, the three towns plus the school, in terms of projecting forward and making estimates going forward and seeing what we can do this year because next year's step we think will be like this, about this size and that type of thing. So I just wanted to make that point. The demographic information and planning forward information will be extremely important, and the more that we could share will be extremely valuable.
Mr. Gifford.
Thank you. Last year, after the budget was passed based on not having the four deans. And then as Bob mentioned in his questions and comments earlier, then the four deans ended up being hired. That definitely raised some eyebrows in Lancaster. What financial situation enabled the hiring of those deans? And how do we guarantee that if a windfall were to occur, that there wouldn't be other expenses that people are not anticipating? It, in some sense, it undermines, I think, confidence and credibility. And I wanted Bob to hear that people in Lancaster also noticed.
Well, the way I'll respond to that, Mr. Gifford, is everything that we said about that last year is in the record. It's in the recorded meetings, it's in the meeting minutes, it's in the presentations that we gave. And so when we talked about the dean positions, we also had a priority list of how we reinstate those positions. And so as we discussed earlier tonight, when the insurance rate, they were able to discount our rate, Ross, that was like beginning of May or something. They discounted that rate on our insurance that gave us the value that was able to return the dean positions. So that's where the dollars were in the budget. So no additional dollars were brought into the budget and had to be paid for. It was all through renegotiating terms of those insurance contracts. So that's in the record and that's in the meetings from last spring. So,
and I do appreciate the reminder.
That's where, as I hear commentary to that, there is nothing that we don't put out publicly. around the construction of that, and we build our rationale for our committee to hear. And so you will find it in the materials, you will hear it in the recordings of those meetings to create that forecast. And so if you ever have those questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We can answer them as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with one thing. I don't think the concern is that something was being hidden. I think it's more that a lot of the pain in that led up to saying, okay, we're going to reduce these 4 positions was already behind us. And that if we had just followed through with that and taken the additional savings from the reduction in the health insurance rates, I don't think we'd be in this position today. The budget would be right where we need it to be, and I think we would be in good shape. It was the fact that instead of taking the additional savings, we just reverted right back to the original budget that included the 4 positions. I think that's the frustration.
So if I may respond to that as well, Bob, is all throughout the presentations we talked about is we have to manage a period of time because we had some factors that came together in a confluence that was a perfect storm for us. And we had to navigate that. In doing that, those are critical positions in our system. I'll give you one, not to mention, the safety and security that our deans provide to our students every day. That's a critical need. It is a critical need. And if we look just at our attendance data alone, for which our deans are responsible for managing our school systems, it's gone up significantly this year. For the first time, we're tracking at the high school over 95% for our attendance, where it's been hovering at levels of 93. So we're getting value out of that. This isn't something that is a nice to have. And I think that's what we need to remember is we're educating kids. And we're not just educating them in terms of reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're educating them in terms of values, and we're also making sure that they're safe when they come to school. So the budget that you have in front of you is the bare bones budget to execute that high quality education program. And the people of Bolton and Lancaster and Stowe have told us that's what we want. That's what we need. And so it's my obligation as superintendent to report to my committee and bring that forward.
Yeah. And I just want to be clear that I'm not specifically poking at those dean's positions and saying those should be eliminated. I don't think it's our role as anyone here on our various finance and advisory committees to dig into how you should, manage your budget. I think the point we're trying to make is we may need to make some hard calls, and maybe that means increasing class sizes. That's up to you and Ross to figure out how to work that out. We're just suggesting that we need to find other ways to reduce the budget.
I will jump in here if it's okay, and then I'll address you, Emily. To piggyback on what the other 2 gentlemen had said, we are a 3-town system that functions because all 3 towns can afford to support the school district. We all see the value of the school district. We all appreciate what you're going to do. I have a 7-year-old myself at center right now. And my number 1 priority is ensuring that we can continue to have the school district we want that survives because all 3 towns are able to survive while also supporting the school district. We are also in a situation where in Stowe, you guys are hands down the largest single contributor to our town operating expenses. And I will put this out there again, 7-year-old at center school. I'm the easiest person in the room to sell right now. I handedly want to support everything you want. It is a question of how we are perceived by the town, by the citizens of the town, how we attribute the funding when we have, again, not to poke at the deans. The position isn't the problem. The issue at hand is we have communicated to you that the continued growth is a challenge for our communities. And we had an opportunity to not expand that growth. And that the school board and you as the superintendents decided to fill those positions. And I understand that they are mission critical positions. but we have to always ask, like, if everything is mission critical, nothing is mission critical. So what is most mission critical? Where can we find the savings that allow Bolton and Lancaster to continue to grow and support their community, but also participate in the school? Stowe is fortunate right now in that we are not in his position, but that has not been true in the past, and I'm sure it will not be true again in the future at some point. And so I want the school board and you as its stewards to be aware of the fact that we want to be part of this and we want this to continue to grow and operate to the goals that we aspire to, and that you outlined at the beginning of your presentation. But that we are struggling, and that if we are struggling, I understand that you guys will be struggling as well. But we need to work together to find some sort of mid ground where um, uh, we as finance members, when we walk out into our communities, can have honest conversations with our constituents and say, like, yeah, this is what they told us, this is what we said, we came to an agreement, um, and have everyone believe, even if it is always the case that we are as representatives operating in good faith, the optics of it can be just as damaging as anything else.
Thank you,
Uh,
Brian, for your comments, and I don't necessarily disagree. I'll just share with you all as just sort of a side story that one of the things I appreciate is, frankly, like things like this conversation. These are challenges every town in our Commonwealth faces. And when we look at a budget operational increase of 3.72%, in a regional system, it impacts each town differently. That is an increase that is a humble increase relative to like school budgets in other places in the state. And what I will say, though, is some of my colleagues at times are frankly jealous of me because we do have relationships with our town leaders and boards like this that afford those kind of conversations for us to be thinking and talking about. Coming back to the change, and I hear the point you're making, Brian, and thank you for demonstrating with our other two towns your agreement there. Is to say, though, that the costs that we had in that were within budget. And so there was we negotiated our way to get to that place through other means like the contracts. And that stays within the baseline. So that doesn't shift our baseline for what the voted budget is year over year. Our voted budget was the voted budget at that point. So the 3.7 increase this year is off of what the voted budget was, whether the deans and insurance exchange was able to be made or not, it would still be the same.
Thank you for that clarification. Emily, go ahead.
Hi, yes, I didn't actually have a question. I just wanted to make a brief comment. I'm not sure exactly who mentioned it before, but someone had said that, I think it might have been Ralph, someone had said that the 4 deans were hired. I just wanted to clarify that those positions were already in place. So there were people who were not losing their jobs. They weren't actually going out and hiring. So that was just to clarify there. I also just wanted to state that this was like my 9th year on the Lancaster Finance Committee, and I think this year has been the smoothest for the school budget. I know a lot of that, at least from Lancaster's perspective, Dick Shuffle helped out a lot with that. But I do want to mention that I appreciate the work that the school committee and Superintendent Downing and Mr. Mulcairn have done, because I think it's gone much smoother this year. And I am not in the same opinion that the dean should have been eliminated. I think I agree that obviously the budget was the budget that was voted on, and just because the deans were not eliminated doesn't mean sacrifices weren't eliminated. So I just wanted to go ahead and share that from my point of view.
Thank you for that clarification, Emily. Does anyone else have any more questions or comments they would like to add? Go ahead, Don.
I want to try and thread a needle here and be respectfully blunt. I really do appreciate, and I know how hard, I literally know how hard Ross and Kirk have worked. I've done budgets of this magnitude. It's difficult. And Kirk, I agree with you. 3.72% is a modest increase. But the reality is the voters have said 2.5%. We don't have none of us have a choice in this. We need to get the bottom line to the bottom line. So I don't know what else to say. So I'll end there.
Go ahead, Mr. Gifford.
Thank you. And feel free to call me Ralph. Everybody else does. First, I wanted to second what Don just said. It is a difficult financial reality we have to live with that 2.5% increase. And it just keeps squeezing other necessary expenses. That wasn't the reason I raised my hand. I had a question about variable costs. I presume you have a handle on your fixed costs for operating the school versus your variable costs. That is, the costs that are going to directly increase as enrollment goes up or decrease as enrollment goes down. And I further presume that the bulk of the costs are fixed costs, but I was wondering if you have a number on the variable cost per student.
I'm not quite sure how to define that, Ralph.
So there would be, for example, I give you a simple example. Potentially, supplies would go up on a per student basis. As I say, as I said earlier, I'm sure that most of the costs are fixed costs, but some of the costs must be variable costs. And is this something you analyze?
Yeah,
Or
it is
not?
actually.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Ross.
yeah, it is, Ralph. It is something that we take a look at. So for K to 8 or preschool to 8, what we do is we apply a per pupil for a great majority of their school-based budget categories. So things like the office supplies, textbooks, general instructional supplies, PE supplies, music supplies. We do those on a per pupil basis. So I set a per pupil. I had not increased that in a couple of years. This year it did go up a little bit. And so we do allow for a per pupil. So if a school does go down in enrollment, those costs go down. If we change the cost and they stay steady, then they get a little bit more money going into the next year. So we did make some adjustments in some of those categories, but not others. If you look across our sort of school-based non-salary increases, they're very nominal as compared to the entirety of the budget. Things like utilities that are very variable. We do work with an energy consultant on our procurement, and we're very satisfied with that. So for natural gas and electricity outside of Hudson Light and Power for Stowe, but we do go out to market and get the best we can, and we use our consultants' best advice on that. We typically get somewhere between 10 to a dozen responses on gas and electric bids, depending upon the season. For our heating oil, we're part of a consortium of over 2 million gallons of heating oil, of which we're about 110,000. So those things certainly change, and we try to control as much of the cost as we can. But we do set some fixed things within the district for sure. We're also going to do our best to highlight how grants have enhanced our school district without impacting the operating budget year over year. Our teaching and learning department does the majority of that work. And it's millions of dollars worth of grants that have come in. The school committee approves them. We use them for those programs, but we should be highlighting that. We're going to do that in our this year's budget book. So from that stance, we try to control as much of the variables as we can. And at a quick glance, you're at 85% of our cost is salary within that budget. So when you get into the approximately $400,000 increase on non-salary, Ralph, there's not a lot of wiggle room when you think about things like special education transportation, out-of-district tuition, the pens and pencils, utilities, all those kinds of things. We control as much as we can, and we try to mitigate where we can, like we have with special ed transportation going into FY27.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me explain a little bit about why I ask. As was mentioned earlier in the presentation, enrollment we forecast for enrollment to go down. And people ask me, why are our costs going up when enrollment is going down? And I want to be able to say it's because our variable costs are relatively small. I would estimate the vast majority of our costs are essentially, if we have a small drop in enrollment, unless it happens to congregate around a few classes that allows us to reduce teachers, we really have very little decrease in our costs overall. To have a significant decrease would require enrollment to go down enough so that we can actually reduce staffing levels. At the same time, if enrollment goes up, it shouldn't also necessarily cause a significant increase either. So it should go both ways. And so I'm asking these questions in part just to be able to definitively say it's because we don't really have a whole lot of wiggle room just because the enrollment goes up or down. Most of the costs are committed based on the personnel and.
Yeah. So Ralph, I'd follow up on you're absolutely correct. So, if we receive 15 students across the district, those aren't necessarily in one classroom in one school. So we don't have to add a teacher. And likewise, if 15 students leave across the district, we don't decrease a teacher. However, I will point to what Superintendent Downing presented probably an hour ago now.
The very beginning, about equity.
Well, about the kindergarten sections, Ralph.
Oh,
so
yes.
if you think about this trend of decreasing numbers of young people in our Commonwealth, we are now starting to see that in kindergarten. So when I was a principal at the center school and started in this district, 10 years ago, we had 5 sections of kindergarten at center. We're projected for 3 next year. So the decreasing enrollment won't show up every year the way people think it will in a per pupil formula. It will show up in time as we see the results of lower numbers of school-age children entering our system.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, seeing none, would the Finance Board of Lancaster like to close out their meeting tonight?
Yes, thank you, Brian. So to the Finance Board of Lancaster, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the Lancaster Finance Committee. Is there a motion?
I will motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Emily. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for a vote. Emily on the motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Mike on the motion to adjourn?
Yes.
And Roy votes yes also. Lancaster Finance Committee is adjourned.
Bolton.
I don't think Bolton came to order.
Right. We don't have a quorum, so we
Oh.
never called to order.
In that case, Stowe, I will also entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening.
I move that we adjourn the Stowe Finance Committee meeting
Seconded.
tonight.
With a motion in a second. Ross,
Yes,
Tom.
with a
Yes.
comment.
Oh, go ahead, Ross.
I want to thank the school administration for taking their time to present the budget. It helps to see the nuances of what goes into the budget and probably the pain that they go through to get the budget. And I vote
thank you.
yes.
All right. With a yes from Tom and Ross, I am a yes as well. And Stowe is adjourned. Thank you both, Mr. Mulcairn and Mr. Downing. I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. This is always a very challenging evening, but you guys comport yourself well.